The headline of the day.
Ooh.
Steve Wilks is now moving to the sideline. From the booth to the sideline per Shanahan's request, I assume. Now I'm gonna play you something.
Okay.
And just give me your take on it.
What is your personal feeling on it?
I love being in the box. I think that's the best spot. I feel like you guys would judge me too hard if I went up there. If it ever gets cold enough, I might be. I like a chair and a desk and a lot of stuff to write down and things like that. But I had to do this for 9 years before I got here. I was only in the box 1 year, my last year, so I was 8 on the field before that. There's pluses and minuses to both, so you usually go with your preference.
What swung it? Why move, Steve?
Just because of some of the stuff you do in the box, all the advantages to it, which are great, but I kind of wanted to be down and be near our players a little bit. They've had that more just with the linebacker communication in the past. And I want him to be down there so he can talk to guys a little bit more.
What is your personal?
So
there you go. It's so funny because we asked Peter King about this on 95.7 The Game, and he kind of laughed and was like, hey, he doesn't think it's a big deal. And, I would if you're going to be held, your feet are going to be held to the fire. You got to produce. This is the NFL. So, if I would just want my guy to be wherever he's most comfortable. And if he's more comfortable in the booth, then he should be in the booth. But what Shanahan is saying is kind of consistent with their theme all the way through during this whole Wilks decision, is that they want to go with what they want to go with, and he's got to adapt to them. They're not going to adapt to him. He likes to be in the booth. Yeah, but their coordinators have been on the sidelines, and maybe their linebackers or their defense feels like they need, better streamlined communication and more communication. We'll see. Obviously somebody felt that way. And so, and I've heard about this for several weeks, that this was, kind of an internal debate. Should Steve be on the sidelines, so on and so forth. So, I don't think it's going to make a big difference. I really don't. But, I think Steve should watch it from wherever he believes he should. But, in the NFL, you are wed to your players. And if your players are used to one routine, maybe you want to stick closer to that routine. It's all about production. They're not stopping the run. And it really comes down to that. So why are they not stopping the run? They're not stopping the run because they've got a lot of pass rushers. Hargrave's more of a pass rusher. They miss Azeez Al-Shaair, very aggressive tackler on that second level. And their safeties, I think, are really not, they're not consistently making tackles in the run game. So from what I can tell, the coverage is not as tight as it needs to be. Doesn't seem like the coverage is tied to the rush. As far as the timing, the coverage seems a little slow in that timing. The rush is almost getting there. The coverage is not tight enough. So in some ways, I don't blame Steve Wilks. Why? Because at the end of the day, coverage is coverage, and you got to have, you got to be able to play it. The key to pass coverage is pass coverage. In other words, there is no key to pass coverage. You got to have dudes. You got to have guys. And to me, it's about personnel. I don't think their personnel is good enough on the back end with Oliver, and I think they've, hopefully Womack and or Luter can add something to their defense between now and the end of the year, because their coverage has not been as tight as it needs to be. Nowhere close. I was looking at the numbers the last 2 weeks. They've given up 63 completions, and they've had 14 incompletions. They're getting carved up the last 2 weeks, and either this week's can be exactly the same, or they're going to have to make some changes or get a whole lot more push up front, because the coverage they're not staying. Guys are open. The last couple of weeks, the receivers have been open.
Yeah, if I were to get into the mind of Kyle Shanahan, my guess is that, he sees the booth as a kind of a comfort thing. Like, he kind of even explained that in his little thing there that we just played. It's like a comfort thing. Like, he prefers it, but he doesn't do it because he doesn't want to get the shit for it or whatever. I think I think they gave Wilks that luxury, but now that they've lost a few games in a row, they're kind of like, you don't have that luxury anymore. You don't have the luxury of being in the booth. We need you on the field. That's what we want to do. So Shanahan's kind of taking the reins a little bit away from Wilks in that sense. I think he's kind of telling him what to do. And I know we kind of talked about this before, but I just feel like if you're going to give him the job, you got to give him the ability to do what he wants. But I mean, if Wilks is okay with it, I mean, that's the other thing. Wilks is going to talk on Thursday, right? So
Yeah.
so it's like he'll probably, I mean, who knows what he's going to say? Maybe he's going to say I don't care, or maybe he's going to say, it's fine by me, or yeah, I need to communicate better. But as I know it right now, it's the way it works is Wilks is on the radio, talks to Holland, and then Holland talks to Warner on the field. That's what I heard someone explain. So maybe, having Wilks on the field kind of clears up some of that miscommunication potentially. Maybe there's miscommunication we're not aware of that's going on the field. So, I mean, I guess we're going to have to figure it out. We'll see how it goes, but I don't know. It may be a nothing burger, but it's obviously a very pivotal time right now. Right now it's a must-win scenario. So they got to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I would look down at my roster and say, let me look at some of the young talent that I have that I'm not using yet. Ronnie Bell, Braden Willis on offense, Jalen Graham, Jair Brown on defense. And I would try to utilize some of my younger players and at least take a look at them. Because a guy like Greenlaw is really beaten up. And, it's, you can only play so many snaps. I would love to see the 49ers go to Jalen Graham. I really do. I think, he did nothing but make tackles at Purdue. He looked great in the preseason. He can run. He can break down in space. He's an undersized linebacker who can break down in space and make lots of tackles. He made lots of tackles at Purdue, and he looked great in the preseason. I would love to see him active just so if Greenlaw does go down in one of these games, they've got, somebody who can step in and man that beyond Oren Burks and Demetrius Flanagan Fowles. I think that would help. I would really believe Graham could make a ton of tackles. What I see is a lot of, running backs and guys standing around and there's nobody flying to the football. And it's like they got to have a lot of hats on the football. So, they really got to do a better job against the run. The safeties, the corners, the linebackers. I mean, really everybody on that back seven has got to do a much better job of tackling because they got to up the field pass rushing, group with Chase Young and Bosa and Armstead and Hargrave. The second level guys have got to be able to stop the run because they're all geared to rush the passer.
I think that the debate right now is really this. It's do you think Wilks is the problem, or do you think that the team is the problem, or is it both, or is it neither? Because there's arguments to be made about, oh, well, nothing changed and Wilks changed, like the defensive coordinator changed, and now the defense isn't as good. And one problem that you brought up is that the linebackers are just missing tackles. They've missed 24 tackles through the first 8 games. At the same time last year, they had missed 10. Warner's missed 12 on his own this year. Greenlaw's missed 10. So it's like, can you blame Wilks for the missed tackles? I don't know. That's not really a schematic thing. It's like,
no,
so it's like there's just issues, period.
Yeah. If you said, is it more Wilks or is it more personnel? I would say it's more personnel because the 49ers have some really good personnel that they've spent a lot of time in, evaluating young players on their roster that they just need to go to and give some time to. I mean, Jalen Graham was a great draft choice by the 49ers. D. Winters, I think, was a really good draft choice by the 49ers. So, I mean, Ronnie Bell, I'm convinced could be probably do as good or better job than Jawan Jennings. I'd like to see Ronnie Bell in the second half of this year. Braden Willis, I think, can contribute. J.P. Mason, I really think is ready to, can carry more of a significant load. So I think they've got some young players. They're, if they want to see more speed, and Shanahan today, he said, he kind of turned it on me. I said, you need more speed. Where are you going to get that speed? He's like, where do you think? And I'm like, well, do you have any ideas? And I'm like, well, Danny Gray. I mean, I know Danny Gray's just pure speed. Can you get him on the field? And that's just one guy. But, if I had gone on, I would have said, hey, how about Jalen Graham? Jalen Graham is a terrific open field tackler who's done nothing but make tackles, and it's like he can't even get active. I would definitely activate Jalen Graham. I just really believe that he's a fantastic linebacker. And right now, what they need is they need to make tackles in space against running backs, because they're and Greenlaw looks really, really banged up, and Warner's played a lot as well. Flanagan Fowles and Oren Burks are good players, but I think they're really better special team players. I think Graham has got a chance to be a very good player, and he represents speed and open field tackling ability. And right now, that's what they need. I mean, they really need some help at linebacker, because the last 3 weeks, running backs have just run through the 49er linebacking core. Kev, your mic. I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. What I was saying was I'm less concerned about the linebackers than I am about the secondary. The linebackers are at least proven blue chip guys. I mean, I would bet that Greenlaw and Warner get better before I bet that they get worse. And with the secondary, I don't know if anything's really been fixed. They haven't addressed anything in the trade deadline, and I think there's just like when there's smoke, there's fire. It's like the Niners have more pressures this year than they did last year at this point, but they have like a third as many sacks. So it's like, is the coverage not holding up? And that would be my argument. The coverage is not holding up, and they can't get to the quarterback because the quarterbacks are time to throw is too quick. And that's been kind of the recipe all season long, with even going back to Stafford in the Rams.
I know. And you've got 3 players back there in Oliver, Gibson, and Hufanga that are just kind of okay in coverage at this point. I mean, I think Lenore's still a really good cover guy. Ward, I think, is still their top cover guy. But there are holes back there as far as pass coverage. And, we've seen the last couple of weeks, the last 2 weeks now, how much of it was just it was Cousins and Burrow, and those guys are just masters. But, any way you slice it, they carved up the 49er pass defense. So, and then giving up 5 yards a carry to Joe Mixon, it doesn't sound that bad in some ways, because you're like, Joe Mixon's a pretty good back. Cincinnati's a good football team. But they were 30th, I think, in rush offense coming into that game. It's not like they ran for 2.1 a carry the game prior against the Bears, and then they just gashed the 49er defense. So